I am taking the tree set example. So when it comes to tree set, in a normal approach, assume you are writing this code inside a main method, then to add collection of elements or objects into this tree set, what we have to do? As a tree set is a predefined class, so we have to create the object for it. So I'm going for a normal collection approach. That is nothing but the class name. Then programmer defined variable name equals to new, again a class name, and a default constructor. Yeah, or no argument constructor, which we are aware of. So once we write this one, then to add elements into this collection. Now tree set object variable ts is a collection which is pointing to the tree set object. By using which methods we can add the elements? Add method. So here I am using object variable ts dot add method. So add some number 1. Then followed by I am using ts dot add some character, say a. Then ts dot add some name, say Java, and some float value, some double value. Then followed by ts dot add, I'm using a again, and also I'm trying to add ts dot add a value called null, and also ts dot add a value called null once again. Then finally, to see the output, I'm just writing system.out.println, print the object variable name ts. What is the corresponding output for this one? Do we get any compile time errors? That's my first question. Do we get any compile time error? What's the reason behind that? For duplicate values, do we get compile time error or runtime error? For adding this a once again as a duplicate value, even for adding this null as a duplicate value, because I am going with a preset of normal approach, collection approach, we don't get any compile time error, we don't get any runtime error as well. But in the output, what we get? In the output format, do we get square brackets or curly? What's the reason behind that? ToString is a method which will be implemented internally for this collection. Therefore, we get the output as, yeah, which order? What is the purpose of this preset? Ascending order or default natural sorting order? Default natural sorting order. What's the meaning of natural sorting order for this? One has some ASCII value internally. I am also not aware of. A has some ASCII value. Then based on that, we get the corresponding output. So I'm not sure about this is the order, but do we get A twice or once? We get A as once only, and do we get null twice or once? Once, depends on the version which I am using. Okay, that's the meaning behind this is the tree set where we are not following anything called as generic type. So therefore, this will take the heterogeneous kind of data. Correct or not? Tree set will take or no? What we discussed? Only homogeneous kind of data. Therefore, because of that, so these all things are not allowed. So to make sure that what kind of data or collection you are using for this tree set. So when we don't follow the generic approach, there is a concern. I can go for hash set where all these are allowed because it takes both homogeneous and also heterogeneous. If it take the same thing as hash set and here also hash set, then there is no problem. Happily we get the output in some random order without any duplicate values. But once we go for tree set, since it takes only homogeneous kind of data, even though the collection approach or generic approach, it will take only homogeneous kind of data. Therefore, all these are nothing but not possible. What is the reason behind that? What is the property of tree set? In which order the elements will be stored in the collection? In the ascending order. Then how can we compare a string with integer and a string with character and a string with null? Is it possible? No. What is the meaning of one and null comparison? Can we say which is greater, which is smaller, or both are equal? So we cannot have such kind of information. That is where tree set will throw the error whenever we use the heterogeneous kind of data. It accepts only homogeneous kind of data. Yeah. So even though normal approach or through a generic approaches, then what is the meaning of generic? The generic approach is the same tree set object only if we create the object with this syntax. For this, if we are using a tree set, and here left angular or less than symbol, and I am mentioning this as integer kind. Then program a different object variable name ts equals to new tree set of again generic type as integer. Then followed by corresponding constructor. Closing of this angular brackets, then parenthesis default constructor, then semicolon. So to this same previous syntax, I have used the same tree set here. This is the meaning of a generic type. This is the meaning of generic type. That means whenever you are creating the object for any particular implemented classes, I am going to mention that this object has to collect only integer kind of objects only. Yeah, that's the meaning of this is the generic. And here also we are going to mention the same generic type with this integer. Now when we try to add ts dot add of 100, will it allow? Yes. If we try to add ts dot add method 1000, will it allows? Yes. Now when we add ts dot add of some character a, allows? Next when we try to add ts dot add of some string, allows? No. Then next when we try to add ts dot add of null, will it allows? Allows or no? All of you. About this null we should be more specific and more clear on. So for this is not allowed, string is not allowed, even though null is also not allowed, because we are making this as integer type. Integer values are allowed, but with some extra condition of this null. I'll discuss that. We are making sure that my collection of objects is nothing but integer type only. Other kind of data is not allowed. That's the meaning of a type safety. So here there is no type safety, but here there is a type safety. Corresponding type of data only is allowed. That's the meaning of generic type. And here is what we are going to write the corresponding objects. Yeah. Is this point is clear, guys? The generic syntax, is it clear? Or any doubts in this place? Only we use a class name here. Then here we are using class name followed by generic type. Which type? Then object variable is also common here. Then new keyword common in both the syntax. Then again class name is common. But again we are making sure that it's a generic type of integer. Then followed by default constructor. Then here also same thing, end of semicolon. So with this we achieve the type safety. From this syntax, there is one more question. Normally, which data type we use to store numbers? Integer data type or int data type? Int. We use int some I equals to store some value called 100. But am I using the same int here in generic type? This is not same. Can we write int there? Instead of integer, can we write int there? So this is not correct. We cannot write int there. Then what's the meaning behind it? This int is what kind of data type? It's a primitive. Is it object or not? This is primitive is not an object. But what is the definition of collection? Collection is a container which is used to store the group of individual objects. So since this is not a object type, it is a primitive type. Therefore, this type of syntax is not allowed in the generic part. We cannot use int, cher, or what are the remaining things? Like float and double, they are predefined class only. So what I am trying to convey is primitive data type names are not allowed in the generic concept. Then what are allowed? What are allowed? Object types. Then what is that integer as object type? Do we have anything? Do we have any object for this integer? So for every primitive data type, there is a corresponding object also, object class also. That's what the next point to understand. So if it is byte as a primitive, if it is byte as a primitive, then the corresponding class name is nothing but byte with B capital. And if it is short in lowercase letters, the corresponding class is nothing but short with S capital. Next, int is next primitive, then integer is a class name. Next, long, then there is a class name called long. Then similarly for char, there is a character with C capital. And then for float, there is a class name called float with F capital. Then double, there is a corresponding class name for this primitive also as double. Then last one, boolean, for this class name called boolean. So for every primitive data type, so there is a corresponding class name. So we call those classes, what classes? Wrapper classes. So here, when it comes to this generic type, only wrapper class are allowed, but primitive are not allowed. So this is nothing but it's a wrapper class. You can take anything. Depends on the kind of data that you would like to store. You can go for any of these wrapper classes. But primitive types are not allowed in this generic syntax. Is it clear, guys? Then about null, one more point, then we'll go for corresponding execution of Eclipse. Where is this? When it comes to tree set, there is an importance of this null, when it is allowed and when it is not allowed, and from which version onwards, what's the change? That's one small information. Then we go for the execution of the programs. So when it comes to about null, so I'm writing two different syntaxes. So one is tree set, and also type is integer type. Then some programmer defined object variable ts1 equals to new tree set with S capital, and again a wrapper class integer type, and then corresponding default constructor simple. So this as a empty tree set object, we didn't add any elements to this as a empty tree set object ts1. So to this empty tree set object, we can add an object value called null. And in the second scenario, I'm taking one more type. So for that again, same tree set, same wrapper class integer type, then followed by a different object variable name, then equals to new tree set, again of a wrapper class integer type, then default constructor semicolon. So this is what we are going to miss most of the times. Okay. So here also the same problem. So because of these new angular brackets were added, so we'll be happy with opening and closing of this one. We'll go with semicolon, especially handwritten code. IDs will throw error there, but handwritten code we have to be careful. And in this second tree set object, I'm trying to add some element first. That is ts2 dot add of. Can I add string? No, because immediately we'll get a compile time error. Then here when we try to add this some integer kind of data, say for example 100, then followed by I am trying to add a null. What's the scenario in first one? Into this empty tree set object, I am trying to add only one value called null. In second scenario, into this second tree set object ES2, first we are adding one data that is 100, which is of wrapper class type. Then we are adding null also. So in these two situations, are they both correct or anything is incorrect and why? Is the first one is correct? First one is correct? Please respond. First one is correct or incorrect? First one is incorrect. Second one, correct or incorrect? Both are incorrect? No. So the first one is correct. Second one is incorrect. Because what is the property of tree set when it comes to the order of the elements to store? Default natural sorting order, which is nothing but ascending order. So when only one element is there called null, to store that into a container, will there be any problem? No, that null can be stored as a only alone element in this empty tree set one object. Yeah, because is there any other value to compare? Now, when there is an other number, when there is a character or when there is a string, then the comparison of string with null or character with null or number with null doesn't make any sense. So as a single element, it is possible to be added as a null value into this tree set object. That is again less than or equals to Java 1.6 version onwards. This also till this point only. Even in these versions also, when it comes to TS2, first we are adding what? 100. Therefore, in the collection, what will be there? 100 will be there. So since only one element, 100 will be there. Next, what we are adding? Null we are adding. Then what has to happen? Comparison has to happen to store in the ascending order. Then what's the meaning of comparing null with 100? Any sense? It doesn't make any sense, right? That's why here only we'll get the compile time error saying that so this is not possible to add in the previous versions, and in the current version you'll get the null pointer exception. Okay. Previous versions, this will give null pointer exception, and the current version adding itself is the error there into this tree set as a null value. So this is one point you have to be aware of, and also please remember, try to remember these things. Till 1.6 version onwards, adding this null syntactically correct will get a runtime exception or exception null pointer. From the current version onwards, adding null itself is a not possibility because of no meaning to add null into a tree set. We'll quickly go to one program. To start with, HashSet I'll take, not reset. Yeah, meanwhile, you can take this one. So now I'm back to Eclipse to discuss all these collections. Let me create one project for this. Yeah, collection demo is there. So inside this SRC, let me cross check the class name. Test.java is there. Internally, test.java has no other classes. Then inside this same package, I'm going for a new class name, that is hash set is a predefined class we are not supposed to use. So I'm adding something as demo and the direct execution with main method. Click on finish. So inside this HashSetDemo, HashSetDemo class, to go for a generic type, first we have to create the object. HashSet, then some programmer defined object variable HS equals to new HashSet. This is the normal way of creating the object. Is it generic type? No. How to make it a generic? Yeah. Before that, they are present in which class? Which package? All the classes were present in java.util package. So we have to import that. So import space java.util.asset or star. So now the error is removed. Now how to make this a generic type? So in left angulars, we have to make it as a object type. So first I'm going for a simplest example of integer type. Then here also we have to add integer. So this is the generic syntax of object creation. Then by using this hash set object variable, hs dot all the methods which we are aware of, and I'm using only add method for today. Let me add 100, then followed by hs dot add some value 200. Then next one, I'm trying to add one character. It should allow or not? hs dot add method, and here I'm trying to add one character in single quotes called a. Allowed or not allowed? What is the reason? The purpose of using generic type in collections is nothing but to have a type safety. Then what is our type safety must be? The type of data must be of integer type. Then what I'm trying to add here? Character data. That's why this is giving the compile time errors. So we discussed yesterday's class. Getting a compile time error is 100% better than getting some runtime exception. Okay, we can correct here itself. That's one example. Can we add null? Has it I'm discussing, not reset. Can we add null? Can we add null one more time? Yes or no? Do we get compile time error? No. How has it store the elements? In some random order, and also retrieves the elements in the random order only. So whenever we try to add duplicates, at compile time will get error or at execution time will get error. Possible? Possible. While compile time it's possible, even let us cross verify again by adding some of the existing value also, which is dot add off. I'm taking some 200. It is also one of the previous value here. Accepted? Yes. Then how to print it? System.out.println. So print object variable hs. So let me save. Let me execute. What's the expert output? Please, all of you. 100 comma 200? No, we cannot predict the order. It may be 100, 200, or it may be 200, 100. Control F11 to execute. So we got null first, 100 second, and then 200. Did we get 200 twice? No. Did we get null twice? Duplicates are allowed. So in the storage container, duplicates are not allowed. But as a programmer, we can add the duplicate data. But it doesn't have any impact in the result. So this is a just basic example of hash set. Please do take, and with this I'll stop for the